Hello everyone and welcome to another afternoon tea. Today we are delving into a tale as old as time. Sorry. A fairy tale most of us know pretty well thanks to the Disney version. But as with many other fairy tales, the original text is quite different from the cartoon. Very different, in fact, and disturbing in some places. It was written by Gabrielle-Suzanne Barbot de Villeneuve, or Madame Villeneuve for short, and was first published in 1740. So, make sure that you are comfortable with some tea or cookies or any other refreshment of your choice, and let's get into Beauty and the Beast. The story starts off with a wealthy merchant living in a big city with his very big family. He has no less than 12 children, 6 boys and 6 girls. They are incredibly rich and popular, and everything seems to be going well for them until one day when misfortune strikes the family. Their house burns down along with all of their valuables, and the merchant also lost all of his ships at sea. The only thing in the world that they had left was a small country house in the middle of an almost impenetrable forest, which is a bit sketchy. I mean, what were you using that for? But regardless, now as the family is completely penniless, they are forced to go and live there. And everyone is miserable, except for one. The youngest child, a daughter with a very sweet temper, always found contentment regardless of the circumstances. She was just a happy girl who liked playing music and putting flowers in her hair. This earned her the nickname of Beauty, or Belle, as this is a French story. And this didn't exactly make her popular with his sisters, who really disliked her. Ooh, that's still too hot. It's nice though. 2 years go by and the merchant is reached by the news that one of his cargo ships had been found and had made it safely to port at last. He was, however, terrified that his cargo would be sold off at a loss without him supervising it, so he made himself ready to travel. Immediately, his daughters gave him a long wish list of extravagant items that they wanted him to purchase for them, and when Belle was asked what she wished for, her reply was that her only wish was for her father to return in good health. A little bit pretentious there, perhaps. But when pressed on the matter, she did say that she wanted a rose, as she really loved them and hadn't seen any for a long time. So the merchant sets off on his horse and rides to the city. He was too late, sadly, and his cargo had all been sold off and the profits had gone elsewhere since everyone believed him to be dead. He spent 6 months trying to get back what was rightfully his, but in the end he was forced to return home, no richer than when he had left. But it was winter now, and the snow made the journey far more dangerous. He got lost in a snowstorm in the woods and stumbled upon a mysterious palace. As he rode up towards it, he noticed that there were many statues in the garden, and they were all life-sized, human-looking statues, most of them representing warriors. The merchant was too cold to examine them, however, and he hurried inside the palace. Finding no one inside, the merchant rested for a while by a lit fireplace where he fell asleep. And when he woke up, he found that the table had been set with food, but there was still no one else around. He ate his fill and rested some more, and eventually concluded that this magnificent palace was some kind of divine intervention to turn his fortune around, and he decided to claim it for himself. So he gathered whatever valuables he could carry and proceeded towards the stables to get his horse. This is when he sees a magnificent rose bush still in full bloom despite it being winter. He remembers his precious Belle's wish and picks one, but this is when he hears a frightening noise behind him. Turning around, he found a great beast who grabbed him by the throat with its trunk, similar to that of an elephant. The beast scolds him for stealing his roses and calls him ungrateful for not being content with the shelter and food that was given him. Now he deserved to die. The merchant panics and tells the beast that the rose was for his daughter Belle, and he tells him of his family in the hopes of gaining some sympathy. The beast is intrigued and says that he's willing to let the merchant go in exchange for one of his daughters, but she must willingly sacrifice herself for her father. The beast proclaims that the merchant must return in 1 month, either with a willing daughter to give away or alone, to be held indefinitely at the beast's mercy. And he would then never see his family again. Should he try to run away, the beast will find them and kill them all, basically. So the next day, the beast's enchanted horse carries the merchant home to his family, where he is resolved to say his goodbyes, as he couldn't possibly ask any of his daughters to willingly sacrifice themselves for him. He is absolutely resolved that he won't tell them any of it. He can't trouble them with this. But then, as soon as he enters the house, he presents the rose to Belle, practically shouting how dearly they will all have to pay for this thing. He then tells the full story of his encounter with the beast and the deal that he was forced into. And then, of course, everyone blamed Belle. So naturally, Belle offers to sacrifice herself to save her father, which her sisters don't really have a problem with. It is all decided, and by the end of the month, she and her father travel by the enchanted horse back to the palace. Surprisingly, they were met by a spectacle when entering the palace grounds. Fireworks and lanterns welcomed them, which was kind of odd. Belle and her father have dinner in the same room as he had once before, after which they meet the beast. He questions Belle on whether she was there by her own choice, which she confirms, and the beast then says that the father can take whatever he can fit in 2 trunks for the rest of the family as some kind of tribute. He also makes it clear that Belle's family can never see her again. They have an emotional goodbye, and once her father has left them, Belle rushes off in tears to her new room. Sometimes you take a bite of a cookie and it's just goosebumps. Despite her anguish, Belle had a very good night's sleep. She dreamed of a beautiful young man who told her that he loved her and begs her to free him from his torment. The next day, Belle goes to explore the palace and finds several portraits depicting the same man that was in her dreams. Now, who could this mystery man possibly be? She also finds a music room where she plays a bit on the instruments, as well as a library, and she's very happy about this as she loves to read. Or at least so the book says. She doesn't actually read a single time throughout the book. After dinner that evening, the beast visits Belle, and it's the first time that they're alone together. They have some polite conversation for about an hour, after which the beast asks her if she wants to marry him. Just out of the blue. But Belle declines, and the beast leaves her alone. That night she dreams of her dream man again, and she's so taken by him that she seeks out his portrait again the next morning. She thinks that this charming man, whom she's really fallen in love with at this point, might be held captive by the beast, so she continues her exploration of the palace in search for clues. She doesn't find any, but she does make some interesting discoveries. She finds some birds and parrots and dressed up monkeys, whom she takes on as her companions. She also found some magical mirrors that showed her the outside world. Through these mirrors, she could watch the theatre or the opera, or just simply be a fly on the wall in various places. So this became her main source of entertainment for the following days, with each day ending with an audience with the Beast, asking her to marry him, which she always declined. This made Belle apprehensive, as the Beast didn't seem to care that she kept saying no, and she feared that he would one day just snap and become violent. Aside from this, she grew kind of used to him and didn't really mind him that much. She kept on dreaming about her mystery man every night, and he kept on asking her to release him, but remained very cryptic in exactly how she was supposed to do that. In one dream in particular, he became very desperate and took a knife to attack the Beast with, and Belle urged him not to, as she was grateful to the Beast for all that he had given her, as well as her family. But in spite of all the riches and splendor now surrounding her, Belle missed her family and became increasingly depressed. Eventually, the Beast asked her why she was so sad, and she expressed a desire to go and see her family. She asked him if she could go to them for 2 months, after which she would return to the Beast and remain with him forever. He reluctantly agreed, and the next morning, Belle woke up in an unfamiliar room. The magic of the Beast's enchanted palace had sent her to her family in his sleep, and this was their new home. Thanks to the Beast's generous gifts, her father was now wealthy again, and he told Belle all of his business endeavors during their happy reunion. He was even a slave owner now. Imagine that. As Belle had brought with her 4 full chests this time, her father was now convinced that the Beast was actually a good fellow. As the book puts it, discovering in this Beast too noble a mind to be lodged in so hideous a body, he deemed it his duty to advise his daughter to marry him, notwithstanding his ugliness. I mean, he has an elephant trunk and scales. It brings a whole new meaning to the word bestiality, doesn't it? Belle is, however, difficult to persuade. Regardless of his looks, the Beast was pretty dull and stupid. Not to mention that she also had her dream lover, whom she hoped to unite with IRL. But she was quickly pulled into other distractions, as her family now lived in a big city again with a lively social scene. All of her 5 sisters now had suitors whom they were planning on marrying, and wouldn't you know, all of these young men immediately fell in love with Belle. They even began fighting amongst each other for her attention. Again, this did not exactly help with her sister's jealousy of her. So the situation was not great, and on top of that, Belle no longer dreamed of her lover, so she began missing the peaceful life she had at the Enchanted Palace. She then has a nightmare of finding the Beast in a cave where he is dying because of her having left him. So at the end of the promised 2 months, Belle went to bed with the firm desire to return to the Beast. The same magic that had once transported her to her family then also returned her, and she woke up in her bed at the palace. She went on to spend the day with her monkeys and birds, and she tried to watch a performance of the opera and theatre through those magical mirrors, but nothing gave her amusement. After so long an absence, she was impatient to see the Beast, but when the hour came for his usual visit, there was no sign of him. Belle then went to go and look for him. She even searched the gardens for 3 hours before sitting down, feeling defeated and lonely. Suddenly, she recognized the surroundings. It was the same as in her nightmare. So she finds the cave where the Beast lies unconscious on the brink of death. Belle is devastated as she realized at that moment how much she truly cared for him. With a bit of effort, she managed to wake him up, where she then confessed her love for him. The beast confirmed that her leaving him nearly killed him, but now, since she loves him, he will live. As Belle fell asleep that night, she was once again with her dream lover. Even he encouraged her to marry the beast, which Belle found rather annoying. So she spent the whole day after this feeling conflicted. And when the time came for her daily meeting with the beast, he once again asked her if she would marry him. This time, she accepted him, and immediately as she did so, an enormous fireworks show erupted from outside, and she and the beast spent the remainder of the evening watching this with joy. After another pleasant night with her dream lover, Belle woke up to finding him, in all his handsome glory, right there in her room, sleeping on her couch. It was then that Belle realized that he had been the beast all along, and accepting his proposal must have broken his curse. She went up and tried to wake him, but was unsuccessful. This is when she hears a carriage approach outside. She looks out the window and sees the most astonishing 2 women arrive, drawn by 4 white stags with golden hoofs. Belle rushed downstairs to meet them and finds that one of them is a fairy and the other is a queen. The fairy introduces Belle to the queen as the woman who broke her son's curse, and the queen is delighted to meet her. She embraces Belle and asks her what sort of princess she is. Belle admits to being the daughter of a humble merchant, and the queen is anything but pleased. She couldn't possibly have her son marry a merchant's daughter. It would be too degrading. This is when the prince arrives, formerly the beast, and begs his mother's blessing to marry Belle. He even begs the fairy to turn him back into a beast if it means that he could marry her. Belle rather awkwardly says that she doesn't want to stir up any trouble, but the fairy is fighting in her corner. As the queen is still obstinate in her views, the fairy puts her in her place by saying that Belle is indeed of equal standing, as she is the niece of both of them. So, let me explain. The fairy had a sister who married the brother of the queen, and together they had Belle. In other words, Belle is half fairy, and she and the prince are cousins. And the fairy had orchestrated this, the whole thing, from the start. But let's put a pin in that. The prince and Belle are then given some time to themselves, and he tells her the backstory of how he ended up being transformed into a beast. Whew. I always forget that it's still so hot in the thermos. It all started back in his early childhood, as his father had died when his mother was pregnant with him. His mother had consulted a powerful fairy in regards to the prince's education, and the fairy had suggested that she placed him entirely in her care. The queen was reluctant to part with her only son, but then the land was invaded by a powerful neighbor. The queen then agreed and sent the prince to live safely with the fairy until the war was over. But it dragged on for many years. The prince was brought up by the fairy and even ended up calling her mother. And when he was 15, the fairy suddenly disappeared and was away for several years. When she returned, her attitude towards him was significantly changed. She did not want him to call her mother anymore. In fact, she wanted him to marry her. The prince was anything but pleased at this proposal, as she was old and ugly, not to mention he saw her as a mother figure. But the fairy is most insistent, and together they went to see the queen, who was still fighting in the war. But the prince's arrival adds to the courage of their troops, and the very next day the war is won. The fairy then presents her plan to the queen, who is equally as horrified as her son. She basically tells the fairy that she should have a good look in the mirror before suggesting such a thing. So the fairy is now very much offended, so she turns the prince into a beast, saying, "As sense is not required when one is so handsome, I command you to appear as stupid as you are horrible, and to remain in this state until a young and beautiful girl shall, of her own accord, come to seek you, although fully persuaded you will devour her." The fairy then gave the conditions that if they were to tell anyone that he was the prince, he will be cursed that way forever, and then she left them in their despair. But another fairy then emerged, a younger one, which is the one Belle had now met at the palace, who was revealed to be her aunt. She stopped the word being spread by turning everyone at the palace into statues. She also enchanted the palace so that the beast had things to amuse himself with, such as the magical mirrors and a garden that would grow anything he planted in one day. She also shielded the place so that no one could enter there by accident. And the queen then left to go to the encampment of her army, giving the excuse that her son had returned to continue living with the fairy a bit longer. And the years go by until the good fairy warned the beast of the arrival of the merchant, lost in the woods and in need of shelter. And the rest we know. Before Belle even has the chance to speak, they hear the sounds of a royal procession arriving at the palace, so they all rush outside to the courtyard. It is a king that arrives this time, and we learn that he is Belle's real father. He had believed his daughter to be dead, so he was very happy to see her, and everyone gets acquainted. This is when the good fairy tells the king of what had happened to both his wife and child, as he didn't even know that his wife had been a fairy. She had married him against the laws of the fairy order and had managed to keep her marriage a secret for 2 years. But that was when she was exposed by a wicked fairy, the same one who would end up cursing the prince. The king's wife had then been taken by the fairy order and imprisoned, but her mysterious disappearance sparked a rumor that she had been killed. The wicked fairy then disguised herself as an exiled princess in need of protection, hoping to seduce and marry the king herself. Really, this woman. But alas for her, the king only cared about his daughter. So the wicked fairy arranged for her servants to kill her. Luckily enough, the good fairy was watching over Belle and followed her captors into the forest where they planned on smothering her. She took the form of a bear and attacked and killed the 2 servants and fled with baby Belle. She placed her in the care of the merchant by exchanging her for their human baby who had died that same night. And apparently he couldn't tell the difference. She then checked on Belle often over the years to make sure that she was all right. The fairy order had, however, placed a curse on Belle. She had been cursed to marry a beast as punishment for Belle's mother breaking their laws. It was then almost too good to be true that the wicked fairy had in turn cursed the prince into a beast, as they became each other's cure. Thankfully, the wicked fairy was soon punished for her evil ways and was imprisoned in the fairyland and stripped of her powers. So everything is fine and dandy. Belle's mother is released from her own imprisonment in fairyland and is reunited with her husband the king and their daughter Belle. By the good fairy's magic, Belle's adoptive family is brought to the palace, and they all partake in the wedding between her and the prince, and afterwards they go on to rule his kingdom in prosperity, and they live happily ever after. The end. So, that was Beauty and the Beast. I must admit to feeling a bit meh about it, but I have decided to present my thoughts as a numbered list, for variety's sake. Number 1. I dislike stories where characters don't have names. It's understandable for shorter stories and fables, but this was far too long for that. Number 2. I am not completely sold on the Beast. He is described as having paws, scales, and a trunk, making him some mix between, I think, a bear, a lizard, and an elephant. It's just too wacky for my head to get around. And I ended up picturing him as a heffalump for most of the book, which is not exactly scary. Number 3. There is a certain charm to these old stories in how unpredictable they can be. They don't follow any structure or sometimes logic, so you never really know what's going to happen next, which makes it a bit more enjoyable, I would say. Every new chapter is a surprise. Number 4. There was no Gaston. I thoroughly expected there to be a Gaston, and I was very disappointed when there wasn't. Which I suppose leads me to number 5. Disney did a remarkable job in editing the story. They really streamlined it into a charming and exciting tale. Even the relationship between Belle and the Beast is somewhat believable. But in the book, the only thing that showed Belle that the Beast was good-natured was his generous gifts to her family, which I think is rather shallow. But again, this is set in the 1700s, where things were very different from today. And last but not least, number 6. We need to talk about the cousin thing. It just completely nullifies the fairy tale. If we compare this to Pamela or Virtue Rewarded, I know I'm bringing this one up again, and I sincerely hope that the next book I read will not make me think about Pamela. Anyway, Pamela is rewarded for her innocence by marriage to a wealthy man. It was meant to inspire young girls to not give up their virtue before marriage, and by not doing so, they'll be rewarded. Beauty and the Beast was on a similar path, up until we learn that Belle is secretly a princess who was destined to break the Beast's curse. The fairy basically planned the whole thing behind the scenes, even up to the point of directing the merchant to the Enchanted Palace and telling the Beast that his daughter is the ticket to breaking the curse. I just felt it natural to compare these two books, as they were actually released the same year, although one was in France and the other in England, so I suppose there are some differences there. But in other words, the whole adventure of this story happens before the story even begins. It is the intrigue of the fairies that holds all of the thrill and excitement. And that is a much more interesting story, by the way. And after all of that has happened, they just have to wait for Belle to grow up, basically, and get her to the Enchanted Palace within the rules of the curse, meaning that she has to go there by her own free will. But then they just have to let events unfold. Fairy tales are supposed to give you this cozy feeling of escapism and magic and wonder, especially one involving an enchanted palace and fairies. And it did do that in the beginning, but then all the fairy shenanigans started around halfway through the book, and the rest was just told in retrospect by the good fairy, which kind of took the wind out of my sails. I am excited though to rewatch the Disney version now and see if I can find some Easter eggs from the original story. If you're interested in another fairy tale I've covered on the channel, then feel free to check out my Alice in Wonderland video. I'll link that for you below. Do let me know in the comments below any thoughts you might have on the video or Beauty and the Beast in general, as I would love to hear them. Also, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up, as that really helps me out. So, thank you so much for watching today, and I hope to see you back next time.